Hi, I'm Owen Canfield with the opinion page of the Oklahoman, joined as I am every Friday by Michael McNutt, Chief Capital Correspondent for the Oklahoman. Mike, good to see you as always.
Good to be here.
I know you're excited about your St. Louis Rams getting Sam Bradford last night, huh?
It's good for the St. Louis fans and for the Rams. I hope that they get some offensive linemen to protect Sam.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Capitol this week. One of the real big stories this week coming out was the decision by the leadership in the House and Senate to challenge the national health care bill that was passed, Obamacare, if you will, that was passed a few weeks ago. The Attorney General was asked to challenge it on the state's behalf, or legislators asked him to. He decided he didn't want to. So Glenn Coffey and Speaker Chris Bench said, okay, fine, we'll do it ourselves. And so now there's legislation in the works that would allow that to happen. Is that right?
That's right. Just about a week ago, the Attorney General, after he was asked by legislators, as you mentioned, to look into filing a lawsuit against the national health care legislation, challenged the legislators and said, hey, you know, you asked me to do it. It's been a week since I said my decision is not to file. Pass your bill. It's sitting there on the House calendar. Go pass it. Now, remember, Drew Evans is running for governor. He's a Democrat. We have Republican leadership. And what they've done is they've modified House Resolution 1054, which would have called for a vote of the people to decide whether to opt out of the National Health Care Plan.
Okay.
They're now going to make that a statute, and then part of that would be to direct the Attorney General, not to direct the legislative leadership to file a lawsuit. Mm-hmm. So they'll probably take that up in the next 10 days or so. Meanwhile, there's another Senate bill that still allows for a constitutional amendment to allow people to opt out if that statutorily measure doesn't pass muster.
Stunningly, there seems to be politics at play at the Capitol.
Always
on
politics.
this issue, huh?
And of course, you know, it's, you know, Drew Evans running for governor.
Sure.
This way, the Republicans, Mary Fallon, who's a congresswoman who voted against the health care bill, and of course Randy Brogdon is against it, he's running also for governor. Both Republican candidates can say, look, we're against it, which is, most polls are showing most Oklahomans are skeptical if they downright don't like it. And any chance that if the Republican leadership had asked Evanson to file, had directed him to, he then could at least say, well, I filed.
Right.
Now he's pretty much in that corner.
Right.
We'll see what happens, and you know, if that becomes a campaign issue, I suspect it will be.
Right. An issue, speaking of issues, one that went by the boards this week was a bill that would have allowed gun owners to take their gun to a career tech campus and have it with them on campus. That's been shelved now, sort of a controversial bill, or a kind of a hot button bill that while it lasted. So that's been shelved for this session. Not going to go anywhere, at least doesn't look like it
Doesn't
will.
look like that particular bill. The House, the deadline was Thursday.
Right.
It never came up for hearing in the House. They could always, as you know, find another bill.
Nothing's
to put it
ever
on.
dead.
And nothing's ever dead. Not even the marble out there is dead. But you know, but the Speaker said this week that he's not a real big fan of that legislation. He's concerned, and the director of the Career Vote Tech System is also concerned, even though the legislation would require the gun lock in the gun, gun in the trunk, locked in the parking lot. Anytime you have a gun that close to that many people,
makes people nervous.
It does, and you know, so it's one of those things that right now it appears that it's not going to go very far this year.
Speaking of guns, an interesting bill is on its way to the governor's desk today, and that would allow the manufacturing of guns in Oklahoma that are kept in Oklahoma, can't be sold across state lines, et cetera, would be off the federal books. They would not have to follow federal regulations, Brady Bill, all these other things, wouldn't have to register, et cetera. Interesting bill on its way to the governor. Any predictions as to how that's going to work out?
No, it's just an interesting trend that's happened in the country the past couple of years. Montana was the first state to pass this legislation. There's about 6 or 7 states now that have, and they're all similar in nature. And what it does is it's very vague of what kind of firearms we're talking about. It just says it has to be carried by a person. It can't be any more than 1.5 inch bore. So basically, you're talking about rifles and pistols, handguns. Now, whether there be banning automatic weapons and silencers they can manufacture as well, then of course they don't want any federal regulations. And the proponents of the bill say this is a matter of protecting Second Amendment. Everybody has a right to carry bear arms, and the federal government can't tell us what to do. Mm-hmm. So can a manufacturer, would they come into Oklahoma to make guns? They have to be marked made in Oklahoma, and only they have to stay in Oklahoma, so you think they have to be Oklahoma residents who can buy the gun. Mm-hmm. How much of a market is that? and what kind of ammunition. There's some concern from former troopers or legislators saying, these armor-piercing bullets, which are outlawed by the federal government, what happens? Who's going to protect it? And one legislator said, what happens if ATF, the federal agency who regulates ammunition and firearms, wants to come in and take a look at this plant?
Right.
Or is that going to be an encroachment of state rights? Are we going to call out the National Guard or citizens militia to protect this plant? So it's really a gray area, and there's some people who say it may not pass a constitutional test if there's a challenge in the federal court. So far, the laws in Montana haven't been, and we don't know what the governor will do with this. He likes to he doesn't like to tell too much about what he's going to do in advance.
Right.
He likes to look at the final bill unless his attorneys look it over. It's something that the National Rifle Association, big contributor to campaign candidates, is anything with guns. That it's tough for legislators, politicians to say no to that big lobbying group.
Well, we only got 5 6 weeks left in the
5
session?
weeks.
5 weeks left, and always exciting, always interesting stuff going on, Mike. We appreciate your time, and we ask you to read Mike's stuff every day in the Oklahoman and to watch videos here and other news about the Capitol here on News OK.